Billionaire laughed at poor homeless girl with a broken guitar at a school competition until she did this: a grand concert hall filled with the wealthy elite, crystal chandeliers casting golden light on marble floors, children dressed in designer clothes holding instruments worth more than most people's cars. And then silence falls as a small figure walks onto the stage. Torn clothes, dirty hands, a guitar held together with tape and prayer. The billionaire in the front row doesn't just laugh, he stands up and shouts for security to remove what he calls this beggar child. But what happens next will leave you speechless, and by the end of this story, you'll understand why this moment became legendary. This is the true story of Hanna, a tale passed down through generations, a folk tale that proves the most extraordinary music often comes from the most broken instruments. Before we begin this incredible journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs hope today. And please, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us. Hanna's world shattered on a Tuesday morning when she was just 10 years old. The car accident that took both her parents didn't just steal her family, it stole her childhood, her home, her future. With no relatives willing to take in a grieving child, Hanna found herself on the streets, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and her father's old guitar. That guitar, oh, that guitar was a sight to behold, but not in the way you might think. Its body was scratched and dented from years of use. 2 strings were missing, replaced with fishing line her father had improvised during better days. The neck was cracked, held together with electrical tape that had turned gray with age. The tuning pegs stuck, and the sound hole had a split that made it whistle when the wind caught it just right. But to Hanna, it wasn't broken. It was all she had left of home. Every evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Hanna would claim her spot on the corner of 5th and Main. She'd sit on a piece of cardboard, her back against the cold brick wall, and begin to play. The first few weeks were brutal. Her fingers, soft from childhood, blistered and bled. Her voice, unused to performing, cracked and faltered. Passers-by hurried past, some dropping coins more out of pity than appreciation. But Hanna persisted. Something magical began to happen. Despite the guitar's flaws, or perhaps because of them, the music that emerged carried a haunting beauty. The missing strings forced Hanna to be creative, to find melodies in impossible places. The crack in the body gave her voice a unique resonance. The worn frets meant she had to press harder, making every note intentional, purposeful. People started to notice. First, it was just a few who would pause, listen for a moment, then move on. But as weeks turned to months, crowds began to gather. Office workers would detour on their way home. Couples would stop their evening walks. Even the street vendors would turn down their radios to listen. "How does she do it?" they whispered among themselves. "How does such broken music sound so beautiful?" Word spread through the city's underground network taxi drivers, shop owners, beat cops, and late-night shift workers. "You've got to hear the girl with the broken guitar," they'd say. "She'll break your heart and put it back together in the same song." It was a Thursday evening in late spring when everything changed. Hanna was midway through a song her father used to hum. She'd never learned the real words, so she hummed along with the melody, letting the guitar tell the story. A man in an expensive suit stopped and listened. Unlike the usual passers-by, he didn't just drop coins and leave. He waited until the song ended, applauded genuinely, and then knelt down to Hanna's eye level. "That was extraordinary," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Hanna," she whispered, unused to such direct attention. The man reached into his jacket and pulled out an elegant envelope. "Hanna, I'm a talent scout. I've been searching this entire city for someone special, someone with a gift that can't be taught or bought. I believe I've found her." Inside the envelope was an invitation printed on thick, cream-colored paper. The annual Young Musicians Championship. First prize, $300, 000, full music scholarship, and professional recording contract. Hanna's hands shook as she read. "But, sir, I don't have proper clothes or a real guitar." The man smiled. "The competition isn't about what you wear or what you play. It's about what's inside you. Promise me you'll try?" That night, for the first time since losing her parents, Hanna allowed herself to dream. From that moment, Hanna's entire world shifted into focus. Every waking hour was dedicated to practice. She studied the guitar with scientific precision, learning to coax sounds from it that defied logic. She experimented with different finger positions to work around the missing strings. She discovered that if she pressed her palm against the crack in the body at just the right angle, it created a percussive effect that added rhythm to her melodies. The crowds on 5th and Main grew larger. People started bringing friends, family members, co-workers. Someone set up a small speaker system so everyone could hear. Another person brought a spotlight. Soon, Hanna's Corner became an unofficial outdoor concert venue. "She's going to be famous someday," people would say. "Mark my words, that girl is special. I've been following music for 40 years, and I've never heard anything like it." But, with the competition just days away, doubt crept in. What if her street corner magic didn't translate to the big stage? What if the judges couldn't see past her appearance? What if she was fooling herself? The night before the competition, Hanna sat alone with her guitar, playing the song her father used to hum. "Papa," she whispered to the stars, "if you're listening, help me find the courage." Competition day dawned gray and drizzly. Hanna had one set of clean clothes, a simple dress she'd washed in the public restroom and dried overnight under a heating vent. It was wrinkled and faded, but it was clean. The venue was the Grand Metropolitan Concert Hall, a cathedral of music with soaring ceilings, gold-leafed moldings, and red velvet seats. Hanna had walked past this building hundreds of times, never imagining she'd step inside. At the entrance, her problems began immediately. "Excuse me, miss," the security guard called out. "Are you lost? The homeless shelter is on Elm Street." Hanna's cheeks burned with embarrassment. I'm here for the competition." The guard looked her up and down, taking in her worn dress, her scuffed shoes, and the taped-together guitar case. "This is a prestigious event, not a charity case. Do you have identification? An invitation?" With trembling hands, Hanna produced the envelope. The guard examined it suspiciously, called over a supervisor, and after 10 humiliating minutes of verification, finally allowed her inside. The interior of the concert hall was even more intimidating than Hanna had imagined. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across polished marble floors. Ornate balconies rose in elegant tiers. And everywhere she looked, perfectly groomed children with perfectly groomed parents carried instrument cases that probably cost more than most people's cars. The whispers started immediately. Is she in the right place? Someone should call her parents to pick her up. This is embarrassing. Hanna found a corner seat and tried to make herself invisible. She watched as other contestants warmed up with instruments that gleamed under the lights. Violins with pristine varnish. Cellos with mother-of-pearl inlays. pianos that had been tuned to mathematical perfection. And then there was her guitar patches of tape catching the light, fishing line where proper strings should be, a crack that looked like a lightning bolt across its wounded body. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the master of ceremonies, "welcome to the 47th Annual Young Musicians Championship." One by one, the contestants performed. Each was more polished than the last. A 12-year-old violinist played Vivaldi with technical precision that would make professionals weep. A 9-year-old pianist performed Chopin as if channeling the composer himself. A teenage flutist made her instrument sing like a bird at dawn. The audience filled with wealthy patrons, music industry executives, and society figures applauded politely after each performance. But there was something missing, something indefinable that left each song feeling complete but not memorable. From the front row, Mr. Frank Morrison, tech billionaire, philanthropist, and known critic of participation trophy culture, watched with the analytical eye of someone who believed excellence could be measured, quantified, and purchased. "Number 23, called the announcer. "Hanna, no last name provided." A ripple of confusion passed through the audience. No last name? How irregular? How common? Hanna walked onto the stage, her guitar case held together with rope she'd found behind a grocery store. The stage lights were brighter than anything she'd ever experienced. The silence was absolute, not the comfortable quiet of people paying attention, but the awkward hush of people holding their breath in second-hand embarrassment. She reached the center of the stage, set down her case, and opened it. The guitar looked even worse under the harsh lights. Every patch of tape, every replacement string, every crack and dent was magnified and exposed. That's when Mr. Morrison stood up. "This is absolutely ridiculous," his voice boomed across the hall. "This is supposed to be a serious competition, not a publicity stunt. Look at her. She's a street performer with a piece of junk. We have serious musicians here, children who've trained for years, who've invested thousands of dollars in their craft. This is insulting to everyone involved." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Some parents nodded. A few contestants' coaches whispered among themselves. The judges shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But then, from the panel, the eldest judge, Maestro Rosetti, a woman who had discovered more musical prodigies than anyone alive, stood slowly. "Mr. Morrison." Her voice was quiet but carried the authority of 70 years in music. "In all my decades judging talent, I've learned that the most extraordinary gifts often come in the most unexpected packages. This young lady earned her place here the same as everyone else. She will perform." The hall fell silent again, but this time the quality of the silence had changed. This was anticipation. Hanna closed her eyes and took a deep breath. For a moment, she wasn't on a stage in front of hundreds of people. She was back on her corner on 5th and Main, playing for the evening crowd, sharing her heart through 6 strings and a dream. Her fingers found their position's muscle memory guiding her to the exact spots where the guitar would respond. She began with a gentle finger-picking pattern, coaxing whispers from the worn strings. The first notes were soft, almost apologetic, but there was something in them of vulnerability, a rawness that can't be taught in any conservatory. Then she began to sing. It wasn't a song anyone recognized. It wasn't a classical piece or a popular tune. It was the song her father used to hum, transformed by grief and hope, loss and determination. The melody wove between major and minor keys, finding its way like water finding a path down a mountainside. The guitar's flaws became features. The crack in the body added a percussive undertone. The mismatched strings created harmonies that defied traditional music theory. The tape on the neck caught her fingers in ways that forced her to slide between notes, creating slides and bends that gave the melody a blues-inflected soul. But it was Hanna's voice that truly captured the room. It carried the weight of sleeping in doorways and the hope of dreams that refused to die. It spoke of love lost and love remembered, of a 10-year-old girl who had seen too much but still chose to believe in beauty. Something magical happened in that concert hall. The wealthy patrons stopped checking their phones. The other contestants stopped whispering. The judges stopped taking notes. By the second verse, people were leaning forward in their seats. By the third, some were openly weeping. The song built slowly, adding layers of complexity that shouldn't have been possible with such a damaged instrument, but Hanna had learned to make impossibility sing. She played a guitar solo that was part technical skill, part pure emotion, and part magic. Her fingers danced across the fretboard, finding melodies in the spaces between the proper notes. The missing strings forced her to be creative, to reach across the neck in ways that created unexpected harmonies. The audience began to sway, then to hum along with the melody they'd never heard before, but somehow knew by heart. Some stood up, not to leave, but to honor what they were witnessing. Even the security guard who had questioned her at the door was visible in the back of the hall, tears streaming down his face. Mr. Morrison, the billionaire who had demanded her removal, sat transfixed, his earlier objections forgotten. His hands moved slowly to his face, wiping away tears he didn't realize were falling. As the song reached its climax, Hanna opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. For the first time since her parents died, she didn't feel alone. The music had built a bridge between her heart and theirs, and for these precious minutes, they were all connected by something larger than circumstance, or status, or wealth. The final notes hung in the air like incense, lingering long after the strings stopped vibrating. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, pregnant with the kind of meaning that changes people. Then the applause began. Not the polite, measured clapping of a formal event, but the thunderous, emotional appreciation of people who had just witnessed something transcendent. People leaped to their feet. They shouted. They cheered. They wiped their eyes and embraced strangers. The ovation went on for 5 full minutes. Hanna stood on the stage, overwhelmed, her broken guitar held against her chest like a shield against the intensity of their response. As the applause finally died down, Mr. Morrison walked onto the stage. The hall held its breath again, unsure what to expect from the man who had so vehemently opposed her performance. He stopped in front of Hanna, his expensive suit a stark contrast to her simple dress, and did something no one expected. He knelt down to her level. "Young lady," his voice was thick with emotion, audible through the hall sound system, "I owe you the most profound apology. I looked at you and saw only what I expected to see: poverty, lack of training, an instrument that didn't meet my standards. But you've just taught me something I should have learned years ago." He paused, struggling to find the right words. True talent, real artistry, it doesn't come from expensive instruments or perfect clothes or prestigious schools. It comes from here. He placed his hand over his heart, and here he touched his temple. And most importantly, from experiences that teach us what it means to be human. You have something that can't be bought or taught or packaged. You have a gift. The audience erupted again, this time applauding Mr. Morrison's humility as much as Hanna's talent. When the judges retired to deliberate, the result was never really in doubt. Maestro Rosetti later said it was the shortest deliberation in the competition's 47-year history. "Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced. "After careful consideration, the judges have reached a unanimous decision. The winner of this year's Young Musicians Championship, recipient of the $300,000 prize, full scholarship, and recording contract is Hanna." The hall exploded. Other contestants ran onto the stage to congratulate her. Parents who had earlier whispered about her appearance now sought her out for photos. Music industry executives lined up with business cards. But the most meaningful moment came when Maestro Rosetti presented the trophy. "Hanna," she said quietly, for her ears alone, "I've been in music for 7 decades. I've heard the greatest performers of our time. But tonight, you reminded us all why music exists, not to impress, but to connect. Not to showcase perfection, but to share our humanity. Never lose that gift." The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. The prize money allowed Hanna to get off the streets, to have a real home for the first time since losing her parents. The scholarship opened doors to the finest music schools in the country. The recording contract launched a career that would eventually span decades. But Hanna never forgot her roots. She kept her father's broken guitar, even after she could afford instruments worth more than most people's houses. In every professional recording session, every concert hall performance, she'd play at least one song on the original guitar, the one with the crack and the tape and the fishing line strings. "This guitar taught me that broken things can still make beautiful music," she would tell audiences. "It taught me that imperfection can be a kind of perfection all its own. And it taught me that sometimes the most extraordinary music comes from the most ordinary places." Years later, when Hanna had become one of the most celebrated musicians of her generation, she established the Broken Guitar Foundation, a program that provided instruments and lessons to homeless children, proving that talent exists everywhere, waiting to be discovered. The Grand Metropolitan Concert Hall commissioned a plaque for the stage where she first performed, reading, "On this stage, Hanna reminded us that music is not about perfection, but about the perfect expression of imperfection." Mr. Morrison became one of her greatest supporters and closest friends, funding her foundation and often speaking about how a 10-year-old girl with a broken guitar taught a billionaire about the true meaning of worth. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, if you walk down 5th and Main, you might see a young person sitting on the corner with a guitar, practicing for dreams they're not yet brave enough to name out loud. If you do, stop and listen. Because you never know, you might be witnessing the next legend in the making. This story, passed down now through generations, carries a truth that transcends its telling. That talent recognizes no social boundaries, that brilliance can emerge from the most unlikely places, and that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from instruments that have known sorrow. It reminds us that we are all, in our way, broken guitars imperfect, patched together, held together by hope and determination. But in the right hands, with enough love and practice and belief, even the most damaged among us can create something beautiful. The next time you see someone who doesn't fit your expectations, someone whose exterior doesn't match your definition of potential, remember Hanna. Remember that inside every person is a song waiting to be heard, a story waiting to be told, a gift waiting to be shared. And never, ever underestimate the power of a broken guitar in the hands of someone who believes in the music it can still make. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If Hanna's story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own potential. And remember, we all have a song inside us waiting to be heard. Sometimes it just takes the courage to pick up our broken guitar and play.